I feel like the pandemic has messed with everyone's conception of time, specifically Gen Z, especially since a lot of us were transitioning from our teenage years to adulthood during that period of time. I remember in 2020, I'm 17 years old, senior year of high school, middle of March. I was in my AP bio class getting ready for an exam the following Monday. Side note, I hated exams and tests on Mondays because you know damn well I wasn't studying over the weekend. Well, I never studied in general. If I were to study, it wasn't going to be over the weekend, usually 5 minutes before class started. Anyways, teacher comes in and announces we can leave. They're closing down the school because of Corona for a couple weeks, then we'll be back. How innocent we were. I closed my eyes for a split second, and when I reopened them, I am 22 years old, working a retail job on the opposite side of the country. Almost 5 years has gone by in a blink of an eye. It has felt like two. I'm getting older. Gen Z is getting older. Like, Ninjago is considered an old cartoon. I can't believe that show went on for 15 seasons, by the way. I think one of the biggest shocks in my life as a kid, till this day, was watching the episode in which Zane turned out to be a robot, technically a ninjroid. Saying that word out loud would probably get me in trouble in certain parts of the US. Sounds so much like a slur, it's crazy. When Tesla starts making their androids, I know what people are going to call the darker tone ones. Also, Lloyd shouldn't have been the Green Ninja. Hold my man Kai. Anyways, one thing that I dislike about social media is being called old. Even though biologically you're still really young, being called Unk at 22 years old triggers my fight or flight senses, usually fight, and of course it's usually like 10-year-olds calling you this online. And I understand why they do this, it's funny to get a reaction out of you. Also now understand how millennials felt when Gen Z has been calling them old over the past decade. We still are. I think the reason why we as Gen Z feel so old is because of the expectations society and social media has for us. Like, you're supposed to have your life put together by the time you get out of college, and most people simply don't. And social media makes everything worse because you see people your age or even younger than you who seem like they have their life figured out. At 19 years old, this social media influencer has their own house, is married with a Lambo. Of course, that's an over-exaggeration. The vast majority of 19-year-olds are contemplating dropping out of college and are in massive credit card debt. But when you see so many people online doing better than you think everyone is doing better than you. So you end up setting a clock for yourself and comparing yourself to these few successful young people. In all reality, you're not on a racetrack going against everyone else. You're on a single lane road by yourself. Maybe you pick up people on the way, but the only person you're competing against is yourself. Progress isn't linear when it comes to living. We all reach our own personal goals at a different time. Just live your life. That's my advice. Recently, I've been on a nostalgia tour, listening to old songs from the early 2010s. Crazy to say that's considered old now. And it has me reminiscing about all the stuff I did when I was younger. Growing up, I watched a lot of TV, especially Disney-related shows. I've seen Lab Rats, Ant Farm, Kicking It, this show, Jessie, that Zendaya show. No, not the drug one. I just consumed a bunch of TV when I was younger and had no responsibilities besides taking the trash out. But there was this show on Disney XD called Pair of Kings, starring Lil Little and Mitchell Musso. This was my favorite show growing up. I found it hilarious, especially the first 2 seasons before Musso left and was replaced by Adam Hicks. But whenever I talk to people my age about this show, no one has seen it. Some people recognize it, but they never watched it. And that makes me feel like an unk in my own generation. Honestly, the rest of this video is more of a nostalgia video than an inspirational one. I used to be an avid book reader growing up. I still am, but it's a lot more casual now than back then. I was like a ranked reader back then. I took it competitively. I was a very antisocial kid, so all I did was read. During lunch, I would read. Instead of going outside to recess, I would go to the library and read. And before you ask, no, I wasn't bullied or given any swirlies growing up. I was like the only minority in my elementary school. Probably would have been considered a hate crime to bully me. When I first started reading a lot back in 2nd grade, I only read books that were accompanied by pictures. The OG brain rot picture books, like Diary of the Wimpy Kids, Big Nate, and Amulet. Oh man, Amulet. If you know, you know. I actually have never finished that series. I got to book 5, but by then I started actually reading books. Funny enough, I think the Warrior series is the first series of books that I read that were just words. My introductory to furries, shout out Firestar. But there's this one book series that I was reminded about when scrolling through YouTube recently that made me feel hella nostalgic. I remember being absolutely hooked on this series growing up, mainly because it was the most violent content that an elementary school library could offer, the live leak of books, which I think is why a lot of kids read these books. And hopefully, I'm not the only one who did this, but because these books are so popular, you would end up reading them out of order. Elementary libraries would sometimes have like 5 to 9 books, and it wouldn't be 1 through 5 in chronological order. It would be like book 1, 3, 5, 6, 8. And not only that, we would have like 1 or 2 copies for each book. And at least in my school, you could have possession of a book up to 2 weeks. No joke. You can go a whole school year putting a hold on a book and never end up reading it that year. Of course, in my elementary school, you could request books from other schools in the nearby districts, but if the books are popular enough, it didn't matter. Shoot, none of the schools had book 9 of the Bone series. I didn't end up reading book 9 until I was like 14 when I started to go to public libraries. Like, why do schools have such few copies of books? You know damn well every 10-year-old is going to want to read their Diary of the Wimpy Kid books. Buy more copies. What even frustrated me even more with elementary libraries is that book 4 of a series would have 5 copies, but book 3 of the series would only have 2. And I understand a lot of the times the books are donated, and to be quite frank, the schools couldn't afford to buy more books. Screw the US government. Honestly, man, nostalgia does make you feel old. When I was younger, I could never afford any of the toys you saw being advertised on Cartoon Network. Things like Hex Bugs, something that was only a few dollars, were too expensive for me, and honestly, if I were to get a Christmas or birthday gift, I would rather it be other toys, like Beyblades. I had the Leon Beyblade because I thought he was the coolest dude out there, the nonchalant dreadhead of the Beyblade verse. Man, Beyblades and Bakugans were so fun back in the day. Even though my Bakugans I just threw against the wall because I didn't know how to use them. Fun times. Overall, yes, you and Gen Z are getting older. But you're still young in the grand scheme of things. Stop setting deadlines for yourself because other people set them for you. You just need to make progress. That's it. Keep moving forward. Thanks for watching this video. Make sure to like and subscribe, and adios.